What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today the New York Giants wrapped up another training camp practice. This is practice number 4 of training camp so far. They were off yesterday after a few first days of practice, a little bit rigorous. Took Saturday off to rest. Back on the field for Sunday, and tomorrow they will be back on the practice field once again, this time with the pads on. That's right, tomorrow the pads come on, so the training camp intensity is about to be dialed up a few notches beginning tomorrow, and I'm really excited for that. But in the meantime, they did have another non-padded, a little bit more relaxed practice today, and there were some major positive takeaways to dive into, and I'll just say this. This Giants rookie class is looking pretty good. Okay, we've got some major progress being made from these rookies. Talking about Jaxson with his best practice of camp so far. Talking about Abdul Carter, who looks like the Giants' best pass rusher already. I know that's crazy to say. He's a rookie. They have a couple double-digit sack guys on the team already with Brian Burns. Kayvon had 11.5 a couple years ago. We all know how great Dexter Lawrence is in both facets of the game. But right now, Abdul Carter is impressing everybody. He's looked phenomenal. So we're going to talk about him in just a little moment here. We will talk about Dart, but I want to start this off by saying prayers up for my man Bryce Ford-Wheaton. Bryce Ford-Wheaton suffered a major injury today. He went down with a lower body injury, tried to get up and walk it off. He couldn't, went back down, had to be carted off from practice. Again, it was described as a major injury. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, guys, is, if you're unfamiliar, a former undrafted rookie that the Giants signed a few off seasons ago out of West Virginia. He's a 6'4" wide receiver that runs a 4.3 something 40-yard dash. Just a freakish athlete, but a player whose career thus far has been completely hampered with injuries. Now, he has kind of developed into a role for the New York Giants on special teams. He's become a pretty core special teams player, but generally speaking, hasn't seen the field much on offense, if really at all, during the regular season. Has seen the field throughout special teams, but getting on the field has been a struggle for him. He did tear his ACL as a rookie. Played a little bit last year, but now seems like he's going to miss a significant amount of time once again. So prayers up for Bryce Ford-Wheaton. Also on the injury front, Brian Burns didn't do a ton today. If you guys remember, on Friday, him and Wan'Dale Robinson collided into one another. It was a scary moment, but they both walked it off and were fine. They were limited today's practice, but Burns should be fine. He'll probably return tomorrow, I would assume. However, Wan'Dale Robinson probably will not return tomorrow. Wan'Dale did practice some today, but then had another collision, unfortunately, collided with Dane Belton. They went knee to knee, and Wan'Dale had to leave practice. He was on the sideline, though. Doesn't seem like it's a major injury, but just back-to-back practices with some bad luck for Wan'Dale Robinson. So he might be a little bit banged up still and probably won't be practicing. But that's all of the negative really out of the way here in terms of these injuries. Let's go ahead and dive into some of the positive takeaways from training camp. In terms of the positive, going to start things off with the number 25 overall pick in this year's draft, rookie quarterback Jaxson out of Ole Miss. He had, by all accounts, his best practice of training camp so far today. I saw several reporters who were on site say that this was his best practice. Statistically, he only had a couple of incompletions, very high completion rate, while also being aggressive and pushing the ball downfield and connecting on some passes 10, 20, 30 yards downfield. He also spoke to the media after practice today and dropped some great quotes. First one being, quote, "I don't want to play like a robot. A quote we go by is be aggressive, not reckless," end quote. So Dart talking about trying to balance his aggression with his decision making and doing a pretty good job of that so far. No interceptions today, but some really good throws. He also mentioned that he's starting to feel a difference now a few practices in. He said that it feels like the game is starting to slow down a bit. That's very encouraging to hear for Jaxson Dart. Very exciting. You want your rookie quarterback definitely making progress throughout training camp. This is still early on. It's only his 4th practice. The pads aren't on yet, so things are about to speed up on him once again after these pads come on at tomorrow's practice. But to hear that a few practices in, he's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, find his footing, and things are starting to slow down for him, I do think that's a major positive takeaway here for Jaxson Dart. We knew that Jaxson Dart was an unfinished product. We knew that he was a little bit of a raw prospect, and obviously we know that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to acclimate to the NFL before he takes a chance at the starting job. In the meantime, though, Russell Wilson has looked good at practice. Russell Wilson's an established veteran. We know that the Giants can absolutely get by with Russell Wilson as their starting quarterback. But in the meantime, we definitely want to see Jaxson Dart making some progress, and so far he is. Brian Daboll has given him a lot of praise so far anytime he's been asked about the rookie quarterback, has mentioned that he's working hard, has mentioned that he is making progress. And again, it's good to see that show up on the practice field. You know, there's progress that you can do behind the scenes, and then there's progress that you can make in those team drills. And in those team drills, we're seeing Jaxson Dart throw with more timing, throw with better accuracy, and play, which is especially important, with a lot more comfort in the pocket. It's hanging in there, standing in those pockets, and just surveying the field and delivering those throws. We're seeing more of that from Jaxson Dart, which, again, is just a major positive takeaway. It's practice number 4, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him play in the preseason upcoming. I think that's going to be a great time for him to really start to ramp up his development. Obviously, again, this is going to be a behind-the-scenes development for a very long time here with Dart. We hope that he doesn't even play this season as a rookie because we want Russell Wilson to play well and win a lot of games for the Giants, right? But more than likely, we'll see Dart at some point this year. But in the meantime, behind the scenes, in these team drills and in these one-on-ones and all these different situations at practice, it is important for Dart to be making this progress. So very encouraging update today. Very good, strong practice from Jaxson Dart connecting on some downfield passes. And ultimately, now that the pads are coming on this week, I'm excited to see how that uptick in intensity. Obviously, they're not going to be hitting the quarterback. Quarterbacks are always non-contact, but still seeing that uptick in intensity around the field. Defensive backs are going to be playing a little bit tighter, more aggressive. The pass rush is going to be getting home probably a tick faster as well. So seeing how Dart responds to that will be interesting, and definitely, again, looking forward to seeing him perform at practice. I'll be there this upcoming Thursday and Friday with Alex, guys. So if you want to say what's up and talk some Giants with us, make sure that you do follow along with us on social media at Fireside Giants and come say what's up to us. I'm really excited to meet some of you there at practice. But yeah, really positive update for Dart. Loved the quotes that he dropped at his presser today, and really looking forward to seeing him continue to develop at training camp. But on to the next positive takeaway that I have for you all. All right, the next positive takeaway, we just talked about the Giants' second first-round pick, but let's talk about that beast that they selected, number 3 overall. Abdul Carter has been one of the standout performers at every single practice that the Giants have done this season. I'm not even talking about the 4 training camp practices, but dating back to OTAs, dating back to mandatory minicamp, every single practice, he is just popping off. He's electric. He's been virtually unblockable. Again, the pads aren't on tomorrow. They will be, and so the offensive linemen can play it a little bit more aggressive, get their hands on Abdul Carter and try and get a hold of him. But honestly, good luck. What he has demonstrated so far throughout these training camp practices is an elite speed, elite ability to bend around the edge. His dip move around these offensive tackles is getting him by and pressuring the quarterback on nearly every single rep, it feels like. His spin move is lethal. His ability to beat these offensive linemen with speed to power is deadly. Everything that we've seen from Abdul Carter is encouraging enough to say that I am pretty confident this guy's going to crack double-digit sacks as a rookie. He's looked that good, and I expect him to continue to look that good. Now, we all knew that Abdul Carter was one of the best prospects in the entire draft class. By most accounts, he was the number 1 defensive prospect in this year's draft class, and again, that has shown up practice in and practice out. He looks like he's getting better in these practices, which is crazy enough to say, but really just the level of intensity that he stepped onto the field with and the level of difficulty that the offensive linemen are dealing with in terms of trying to protect the quarterback while Abdul Carter is pass rushing. It's been major, and I'm very excited about this, as you all can tell. So we all knew Carter was going to be great, but just seeing it on the field, seeing him deliver so early is great to see. So very excited for these pads to come on. He's been winning with a lot of speed and a lot of agility, bend and dip around the edge. But now when the pads are on, let's see him start to win with some of this power, bull rush and kind of doing some more of those moves where the contact is necessary on these reps to win. We're going to see those reps start to come together during this week. And also, because the pads are not on, We haven't really gotten a great sense of the Giants' run defense, nor their rushing attack, really. They do a lot more passing than rushing during these 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 drills here. Well, not 7-on-7, but on the 11-on-11 drills, because there are no pads, it's mostly passing. But now we'll start to see some more run game, and we'll start to see some run defense, which I think is going to be great. So keeping an eye on that for Carter this week now that the pads are coming on. But just telling you guys, if you're going to training camp this week, first of all, again, say what's up to me. Second of all, keep an eye on Abdul Carter because you will not be disappointed. I mean, if he stays healthy and everybody else on this defensive line stays healthy, I don't know what opposing offenses are going to do to game plan for such an elite young talent in Carter and some really great pass rushers around him with Thibodeaux and Burns and, of course, the best defensive tackle in all of football in Dexter Lawrence. This Giants defensive line on paper and on the practice field looks like one of the best, if not the best, in the entire NFL. And I really think Abdul Carter is going to exceed some expectations this year, and he's going to put up some pretty impressive numbers as a rookie. So really excited about it. Trying not to overreact too much to training camp clips, but it's kind of hard not to because Carter is just that special like he was at Penn State. We knew he was a tremendous talent there. It's very exciting seeing that talent already appear on the practice field for the Giants at training camp. So I just mentioned that there's not a ton of rushing plays being called at these drills during these drills at training camp. However, there was one clip that I saw today that caught my eye on a rushing play. Cam Skattebo had a pretty nice gain, 10 to 20 yards down the left sideline. It was a rush right through the left guard's hole, and that left guard on the rep was actually Evan Neal. That's right, Evan Neal making some progress on this rep, did a great job walling off the defensive tackle, opening up a major hole for Skattebo and springing a pretty big run there for a nice gain down the left side of the field. So Skattebo also had some other good plays today. He's been a really solid performer throughout training camp. He made an acrobatic heads-up catch in the end zone. He was technically out of bounds. Foot was on the line, but it was a pass intended for somebody else. It got tipped up, and Skattebo just made a great heads-up play to even get his hands on the football. Again, just toe tap, was not able to get it in, but Skattebo making some plays, finding himself in the right place at the right time, often throughout these training camp practices, but really on that rep again, honing in on Evan Neal. Once again, the pads aren't on, so it's kind of hard to gauge how well Evan Neal is doing at left guard, but just to see him appear in any highlight, I think, is progress for him. We don't see Evan Neal highlights all too often, so the fact that we got one today is definitely a sign of encouragement for me, and I'm definitely happy to see that Evan Neal is making some sort of an impact. Yes, with the backups, the second team here with Cam Skattebo. Also on that play, you could see aligned at right tackle was Marcus Bowe, which I think is very interesting and very exciting. The fifth-round pick that the Giants selected in this year's draft out of Purdue. Bowe has said that he is willing to play anywhere at the 5 positions on the offensive line. Giants kind of indicated that he will start at right tackle, but they will work him in at other places. I've really only seen him align at right tackle so far, though, through these first 4 practices. Haven't really gotten a sense of how well he's been doing at right tackle. But again, once the pads are on this week, we will start to get an idea of that. And again, let's not overreact. Evan Neal made a nice block today. That's splendid, but he did it with no pads, so the defensive tackles weren't really able to manhandle him the way that they possibly could. When they do have the pads on, things are going to be more physical. But definitely keeping an eye on it. I liked his technique, liked his form. He walled off the defender quite well, sprung a block, and a hole for Cam Skattebo. So let's see if he can keep that together once the pads come on at tomorrow's practice. Another positive note to mention on the offensive side of the ball, we'll talk about Russell Wilson here. Haven't discussed him a ton in this practice recap. I'll say I don't think this was his best practice, but he did make some decent throws. But I actually want to talk about his legs. He's been under pressure quite a bit here because of the guys like Carter and Burns and all these other great pass rushers that the Giants have. And also, I will admit, Russell Wilson has had a few reps where he's held onto the ball a little bit too long and hasn't necessarily gotten it out on time on a few of these reps throughout practice. However, he has shown some escapability. Pocket collapse, he took off for a nice gain today, and according to those who were in attendance, he looked pretty fast. Looks like he is much faster than people are necessarily giving him credit for at 36 years old. No, Russ is not the mobile dual threat quarterback that he was in 2014 or 15, but you know what? He still has the ability to scamper when necessary, and he has done that on a few occasions so far throughout training camp. So don't sleep on Russell Wilson's ability to escape from the pocket. I know that the statistic has kind of been flying out there that he does take a lot of sacks. His sack rate is rather high, and that is true. It's because he's usually holding on to the ball and hunting for a big play downfield. That's definitely been a slight problem so far through training camp, holding on to the ball and searching for somebody downfield, and probably taking a little too long with the great pass rushers on the Giants defensive line getting after him. But it is only practice, so sometimes the quarterbacks will hold it. They'll maybe call the play a sack, but they play on anyway, and he delivers a throw. But today he actually picked up some yards with his legs as well. So Russ demonstrating, going into year 14 of his career, he does have the ability to make some plays with his legs and gain some yardage when the pocket collapses. And also, Russell Wilson, Malik Nabers, still connecting on those deep balls. Nabers is just incredible. Like, what more can I say about him that I haven't already in any of these practice recaps? But one thing that I'll add here is Nabers is brimming with excitement about Russell Wilson. Go watch his interview on Bleacher Report that he did after Friday's practice. The things that he was saying about Russ, I mean, he is clearly so excited to have this change at quarterback. Couldn't stop praising Russell Wilson's leadership, kind of indicating that was something that was missing from the locker room last year. Big surprise there, not really. But Russ and his leadership has always been well documented. We know that he is a pro's pro, and his leadership has really had an effect on the Giants locker room thus far, and even on the coaching staff as well, with the Giants, of course, making some changes to their practice regimen in the spring, as we discussed on the channel, based on a recommendation from Russell Wilson. But yeah, Nabers is really excited. He's been praising Russ's leadership, but also he gave some praise to Russell Wilson for his ability to read defenses. Nabers explained during this Bleacher Report interview that there was a moment where he believed the defense was in man coverage, so he wasn't expecting the play to go a certain way, but Russ actually recognized that it was zone coverage from a tell that he saw in one of the defensive backs, and he actually was able to make an adjustment and deliver the ball to Malik Nabers for a big gain, and that was something that really was noticeable to Nabers, that he has a quarterback now who can diagnose these defenses, even see things in the coverage that Nabers himself cannot see, and deliver some passes downfield. And I know it's only practice, but you can hear an explanation like that from Malik Nabers, and you can understand why they've already built such an explosive chemistry through the first week of practices, and you can also envision what that's going to look like on the regular season field. Obviously, it's going to be faster, it's going to be more intense, but Russ is an experienced veteran, and he does know how to read these defenses, and he knows how to get the ball into the hands of his best playmaker, and he just happens to have one of the best playmakers in the entire sport now in number one, Malik Nabers. So really excited for this connection. I think it's going to be explosive, and as I keep saying, I think Nabers is going to put up ridiculous numbers this season for the New York Giants. So as I mentioned, it wasn't necessarily Russ's best practice today, though. He did have an interception and, again, took a few sacks. And so I'm going to spin this into a positive for the defense. No concern about Russ. I just praised him for good reason. But I want to spin this into the Giants defense looks legit. Like, we all keep talking about it, saying how on paper can this not be a top 10 unit. They added Javon Holland. They added Paulson and Debo. Banks has made some good plays at training camp so far. Of course, Carter and this defensive line has been making so many pressures. Today, though, there was a tipped ball from Brian Burns, picked off by Javon Holland and taken home for a touchdown. Pick 6 from Javon Holland. He picked off Russell Wilson. We also got some plays, pass breakups from Drew Phillips. I think Drew Phillips tipped a ball that also was picked off by Holland. Maybe it was the same play. The ball might have been double tipped. I'm not entirely sure. But again, Drew Phillips has been all over the ball throughout camp, has made a ton of pass breakups. So has Javon Holland. So the defense honestly has been wreaking havoc in some respects. The offense has been playing well. Russ has been a great standout performer for many of these practices. I mentioned Dart today kind of picked the defense apart with the second team, but we are seeing a lot of those flash plays and takeaways from the Giants defense. They are pretty consistently getting their hands on the football, which is definitely a nice change up from last year's practices and definitely last season. Giants ranked 31st in the NFL last season in total interceptions taken away. That was already apparent in the spring and in the summer. They weren't getting their hands on a ton of footballs. But so far throughout this summer, they have been forcing some interceptions. They've definitely been getting a lot of sacks, pressuring these quarterbacks, and wreaking some havoc, which is great to see. So very excited about this Giants defense. I'm very happy to report here one of these takeaways. Giants defense has been making some plays at training camp, as they did with a pick 6 from Javon Holland today. Last point that I want to mention, because I forgot to do this when I was talking about Russell Wilson, Darius Slayton had an incredible one-handed catch down the left sideline today. It was a nicely thrown ball, a little bit overthrown from Russell Wilson, but also kind of a perfect pass because Slayton was able to just one-hand it and not break stride, reach out and make just a hell of a catch. I'm very excited for Darius Slayton and his potential in this offense with Russell Wilson. We talk a lot about how Russ and Nabers are going to be explosive, how he can hit this deep ball, but I keep saying this, Slayton, his best attribute is his deep receiving skills. He flashed it when he had Tyrod Taylor throwing him the ball in 2023. Before the majority of his career, for really the entirety of his career, he hasn't had a legit quarterback throwing him the ball. So he's often hovered in that 700 to 800 yard range, hasn't cracked 800 just yet. He should this season. I honestly think he could push closer to 1,000 yards than a lot of people expect because he's got a stable and reliable quarterback now throwing him the football. I think that Darius Slayton is one of the most criminally underrated wide receivers in the league. I know that he's had some drops here and there throughout his career. A lot of those drops have been on really poorly thrown and inaccurate passes that have ricocheted off his hands rather than just gone right through them, in my opinion. And I know some of you disagree with that, but that's fine. I think Darius Slayton's going to prove a lot of people wrong this year. I think he's going to prove to be worth the contract that the Giants paid him this offseason and extended him on. And now I'm really looking forward to him catching some of these deep passes from Russell Wilson and hopefully putting together a great campaign. So just really excited about the potential of this Giants team, guys. A lot of positive takeaways on the defensive side of the ball, plenty of positive takeaways on the offensive side of the ball as well, and all of that really does excite me. Looking forward to Monday's practice when the pads do come on, but really looking forward to Thursday and Friday this week. I will be at training camp and can't wait to say what's up to some of you guys and witness my Giants practice in person. But that is going to wrap this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.